Hi everybody, for this pattern today I'm going to be tying a beadhead crystal soft hackle. By the name itself you can pretty much figure out what's going on with this fly. So to start off with, I have a tungsten beadhead I've already tied on. So that's the beadhead part. For the crystal part really is going to be defined by the body. There's a couple different materials you could use for the body, but for the most part you want to use some type of material that has a crystal sheen to it. Two that I commonly use, one is called SLF Prism. It's almost a lighter color. This is Peacock, and I have the same color. It's a Peacock, but it's the hairline. It's called Ice Dub Peacock. But if you hold the two of these up next to each other, you'll soon realize that not all Peacock colors are created equal. So I'm actually going to be going with the SLF Prism today, just a nicer color. So then the final part of this little fly, so we have the bead head, we have the crystal, and then we have the soft hackle part. For the soft hackle, I'm going to be using a feather from a Hungarian partridge. This is what the feather looks like, and I'll get into some details about actually tying this feather on as we go about this pattern. So I have a scud hook. This is, I believe, a 1XL scud hook. It's a size 14. I recommend tying this pattern between sizes 12 to 18 or 20, just depending on how small you feel comfortable tying. To start off, I grab just a little piece of a little piece of pheasant tail. I trim off around 5 or 6 fibers for the tail and get those tied in. Okay, after I have those tied in, I might just squeeze them out just a little bit, lengthen them, and that's pretty much all I want to do with the tail. Just put a couple more locking wraps, trim those, get them out of the way. On the original version of this pattern, they do not call for ribbing, but I really do like ribbing on this pattern. Because I'm going to be using the lighter color Peacock, I really will kind of use this more as an attractor fly. So I'm going to be adding a brighter color. This is chartreuse ultra wire. The size is small. I like this color. It really just seems to pop, especially in the water. I tie a lot of caddis with this color. And though this pattern may not necessarily be representing a caddis, it's a really nice color that just seems to light up the fly. All right, I'm going to get that to the back. I'm just going to tie it down a couple more times. I'm going to make sure that tail begins to bend around that hook. And I'm just going to do a nice little body on this pattern. I'm going to again be using the SLF Prism. As I dub this, I really want to keep it tight. I really want a very tight body on this. So if I do dub on a section that I believe has a little too much dubbing, then I'll pull that closer to me and use that as it gets closer to the head of the fly. So basically I'll create a taper on the thread as I dub. Okay, once I have what I believe was enough dubbing there, I'm just going to wind this forward. And you notice this stuff does go a little crazy, which is another reason why I like the ribbing. So I stop it short, so I still have a little bit of the hook to work with. But if you look, there's a lot of build-up whenever you use some of these synthetic dubbings. So I'm just going to go through, and before I do anything else, I'm just going to trim some of that stuff away. I don't want this body to be that shaggy. I'm just going to bend everything out of the way. There you go. Now it's trimmed down. It looks a lot better. I'm going to move my ribbing forward. You can see that chartreuse color really just seems to light up. Add a little bit more of the ribbing at the front, just to help add a little extra weight to the fly. Alright, next I'm going to wrap back just a couple wraps, and I'm going to add a couple pieces of Peacock. I might tie these in by the tips. And these are going to be really helping out my thorax for this pattern. Just going to make a couple wraps just at the front, just to help darken that fly. And that is it. Okay, if you'll notice, I've left quite a bit of room at the front. At this point, I'm just going to make a wrap or two, and then put a half hitch, and now I know all my materials are secure. Now right now, if you decide to fish this, you can fish this as almost a Bead pattern. You can fish this as a caddis. This really can be representation of a lot of different patterns depending on the size. So the nice thing about it is it really just seems to glimmer when it's in the water. However, we're going to add that final piece to it. We're going to make it into a soft hackle. So I'm going to hold up this Hungarian partridge feather, and the curved side is facing you right now. So I'm going to flip it around so it's facing me. I'm going to hold on to the tip, and I'm going to strip off one side of this feather. Okay, so now it looks just like this. The reason I've removed one half of the feather is because I don't want too many fibers on my soft hackle. I really believe that's one of the common mistakes for a lot of fly tiers. Whenever they tie soft hackles, they just seem to go crazy with the amount of fibers at the front. For some reason, they really treat these patterns like they're dry flies, and they're not. They're soft hackles. They're meant to be fished under the surface, and they're just meant to represent legs. Sure, a fish may see this pattern from a different angle, and you still want it to see legs, but we don't want it to have 26 legs when we all know that nymphs don't have that many legs. So at this point, I'm going to take this, and you can see there's already a little groove in it right now. I'm going to pull the fibers down while holding on to that top portion. You can see I've just added onto the groove, and I'm going to tie in right in that groove at the top. And so I'll just point to this with a little bodkin. So I'm going to be tying in right here. As I lock in there, if you notice, some of these fibers are a little shorter as you get closer to the tip of this feather, and I'm only going to make one, maybe 1.5 turns of this feather, which will be more than enough. It'll put more than enough fibers onto this. So I'm just going to kind of hold this feather in place. You'll notice it doesn't really matter what I do with my thread because it's already locked down. So there's one turn, locking it in place, 2 and 3. So now I have 3 turns. I've locked my soft hackle in place. I can just pull all those fibers from that feather out of the way, trim all the initial ones, I'm having some problems there. Okay, so I've trimmed the majority of those initial ones out. Just going to put another wrap or two. Okay, and then at this point, I can grab my feather and wrap around 1.5, maybe 2 times. If you like to use hackle pliers, this is where you'd attach your hackle pliers to the stem and make your turns. I'm going to make my first turn, and I'll make sure I pull those feathers back as I make each turn. And here's my second turn. And as I get to the top with this turn, that's where I'm going to stop. So I'm just going to kind of I'm going to be pushing against the far side of the hook, so the side you can't see, and I'm holding that feather there with my thumb. I'm going to wrap my thread up, zigzag it back and forth to make sure I have all these locked in place, but I don't want to push them down too much. I'll put one wrap in front of this, this feather. Now I have it locked. I'm going to trim it as close as possible, because I want to get all those extra fibers out of there. 1 or 2 might jut forward, but that's not a problem at this point. Simply hold them back, place a couple wraps, take a look at the fly, make sure you have the fibers going around the way you want them. In this case, I do. I am going to just kind of push them back just a little bit. I don't want them getting pushed back too much. Now at this point, if you want to add a little more dubbing, you can. This is one of those points where if you're particular about the fly, you want it to look really nice at the front, you absolutely can add a little more. In most cases, I won't, because these are just, I really just like to fish these. I like to make them quick patterns. But if you want to add just 1 turn or so of dubbing, don't be afraid to do that. You'll notice I just added a little bit. I probably put just a hair too much dubbing, so I'm just going to pick it off, pull back, put in a half hitch, extend my thread, and then finally whip finish directly behind the bead. Because I'm locking everything in behind the bead for the most part, I won't put any type of head cement or anything on here. Making my Uncle John happy. And then that is the finished pattern. So if we look at this pattern, we have our pheasant tail, which seems to be going all over the place right now, probably from my fingers pushing it up. We have that SLF Prism peacock colored dubbing as the body. I have a really chartreuse colored ultra wire ribbing going on in there. We have some natural peacock that's actually just directly underneath all these Hungarian partridge fibers. We have some partridge fibers we're using for the soft tackle representing the legs. And then finally I put one turn of dubbing at the top just to truly finish the head. It will give it a little more sparkle as it goes through the water. So here is a look at the finished fly, the 360-degree view. I thank you for viewing this YouTube tutorial. And again, this is the Bead Crystal Soft Hackle. Big name for a nice, dependable fly. Thank you everybody for viewing this YouTube tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. Thanks.